This is Damon Fordham, author, historian, as well as adjunct professor of history at Charleston Southern University and the Citadel. Now, I've always been a big fan of philosophy as well as history, so I've always enjoyed reading the teachings of wise people such as Marcus Aurelius and Cicero of ancient Rome, Socrates and his students, his student Plato, whose student in turn was Aristotle, in ancient Greece. But a lot of people don't know that long before any of those men, in ancient Egypt, Northeast Africa, there was a wise man by the name of Ptah Hotep. Who is he and why haven't you likely heard about him? You're going to find out in this video, okay? Now, Ptah Hotep was a Grand Vizier, a wise man who lived and served under a pharaoh by the name of Isesi, around 2200 BC. And in fact, he's buried in the same pyramid as this pharaoh Isesi in a place called Saqqara. That's Saqqara, about 19 miles south of Cairo. Now, this Ptah Hotep, when he was up in age, he decided to give some wisdom to one of his sons. And so either Ptah Hotep himself or one of his descendants, either the son or the grandson, nobody's really sure, but they collected these things into a treatise that's known as the Instruction of Ptah Hotep or the Maxims of Ptah Hotep or the Teachings of Ptah Hotep. It depends on which translation you read. And it goes like this. Instruction of the mayor of our city, the Grand Vizier Ptah Hotep, under the majesty of King Isesi, who lives for all eternity, the mayor of the city, the Vizier Ptah Hotep said, and after some introduction he says, "May this servant be ordered to make a staff of old age, so as to tell him the words of those who heard, the ways of the ancestors who have listened to the gods. May such be done for you, so that strife may be banned from the people, and the two shores may serve you, said the majesty of this God. Instruct him then in the sayings of the past. May he become a model for the children of the great. May obedience enter him, and the devotion of him who speaks to him. No one is born wise." So after that introduction, he goes on to teach his son some very wise things, and here's some of them. "Do not be proud and arrogant of your knowledge. Consult the ignorant as well as the wise. The limits of art are not reached. No artist's skills are perfect. Good speech is more hidden than greenstone, yet may be found among the women at the grindstones." In other words, he's telling the son, listen, don't be too arrogant just because you know a few things. You can learn from anybody. Even somebody who you may think is ignorant knows something or experienced something that you don't know. Pretty deep, huh? Here's some more. "If you meet a disputant in your action who is your equal on your level, you will make your worth exceed his by silence when he is speaking evilly. There will be much talk by the hearers. Your name will be good in the mind of the magistrates." In other words, when you're arguing with somebody, sometimes it's just best to sit back and let them run their mouths. And while you're sitting there acting intelligent and they're out there acting crazy, you will come out as the smarter looking person and gain the respect of those who are around you. Let's listen to some more of these. "If you meet a disputant in your actions, a poor man who is not your equal, do not attack him because he is weak. Let him alone, he will confuse himself. Do not answer him to relieve your heart. Do not vent yourself against your opponent. Wretched is he who injures a poor man. One will wish to do what you desire. You will beat him, though, through the magistrate's response." In other words, when the person is continuing to act crazy and all of that, just let them keep talking, and pretty soon they'll start confusing themselves and wind up sounding really silly. Pretty good advice, huh? Well, let's listen to some more of these. Oh, yes. He speaks here about greed. And get this. He said that if you want a perfect conduct, to be free from every evil, guard against the vice of greed. A grievous sickness without cure. There is no treatment for it. It embroils fathers, mothers, and the brothers of the mother. It parts wife from husband. It is a compound of all evils, a bundle of hateful things. The man endures whose rule is in righteousness, who walks a straight line. He will make a will by it. The greedy has no tomb. Do not be greedy in the division. Do not covet more than your share. Do not be greedy toward your kin. The mild has a greater claim than the harsh. Poor is he who shuns his kin. He is deprived of interchange. Even a little bit of what is craved turns a quarreler into an amiable man. In other words, don't get too crazy when you're looking for things like an inheritance and all of that. Be patient and, understand that you're only going to get a certain amount, but don't be greedy toward it to the point of breaking up your families. It's not worth it. Listen, and here's some more. If you are a man who leads, listen calmly to the speech of one who pleads. Do not stop him from purging his body of that which he planned to tell. A man in distress vents to pour out his heart. More than that his case be won. About him who stops a plea, one says, why does he reject it? Not all who pleads for can be granted, but a good hearing soothes the heart. In other words, if you have real friends and they're going through a lot of terrible things, listen to them. Because guess what? Someday you want somebody to listen to you. Think about it for a moment, okay? So anyway, he goes on to say, if you are angered by a misdeed, lean toward a man on account of his righteousness. Pass over it. Don't recall it, since he was silent to you the first day. Here he's kind of saying, do unto others as you would have them do unto you when it comes to misdeeds. And he goes on to say, know your helpers, then you prosper. Don't be mean toward your friends. They are one's watered field, and greater than one's riches. For what belongs to one man belongs to another. The character of a son of man is profit to him. Good nature is a memorial. That's good advice no matter how you look at it. So he closes by telling the son, if you listen to my sayings, all your affairs will go forward. In their truth resides their value. Their memory goes on in the speech of men because of the worth of their precepts. If every word is carried on, they will not perish in this land. If advice is given for the good, the great will speak accordingly. It is teaching a man to speak to posterity. He who hears it becomes a master hearer. It is good to speak to posterity. It will listen to it. In other words, good speech, if you listen to it and pass it on, the wisdom of it will go on and help people for many years to come. Wow, it's pretty powerful stuff, right? Now, to the question. Why don't you know about Ptah Hotep? Why haven't you heard about this as you've heard of Socrates or Plato or any of these other folks? Here's why, folks. You see, about 391 or so AD, there was an emperor in ancient Rome by the name of Theodosius I. Now, Theodosius I was the emperor who, after about 70 or so years after Constantine became the first Christian emperor of Rome, the Emperor Theodosius made all religions outside of Christianity illegal in the Roman Empire. As a result, he destroyed all of the pagan temples of ancient Rome, and he went so far as to destroy the temples in Egypt, many of them in Egypt, because in those days, Egypt had been conquered by Rome. So this is so as he destroyed a lot of the ancient Egyptian temples and writings, that meant that the hieroglyphics were destroyed, and therefore people were not teach them anymore, and thus the knowledge of hieroglyphics died out. And with the knowledge of hieroglyphics, which was the ancient writings of Egypt, when that died out, the knowledge of them was lost for 1,300 years. Now this is according to Ramsay MacMillan's book, Christianizing the Roman Empire. So for 1,300 years, no one was alive who knew how to read or write the hieroglyphic language of ancient Egypt. Then something happened out of something that would have been ordinarily terrible. In 1799, the French Emperor Napoleon had conquered Egypt. And one of his soldiers was in a place called Rosetta. And the name of the soldier was Pierre-Francois Bouchard. And in the town of Rosetta, this Pierre-Francois Bouchard happened to find this stone that had 3 written languages on it. One was Demotic, which was a later Egyptian language. The other was ancient Greek, and the third was the hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt. And eventually, these were taken by a French scholar of linguistics by the name of Jean-François Champollion. And in 1822, Jean-François Champollion managed to break the code. He realized that the hieroglyphics were that were on the stone with the Demotic and the ancient Greek. He could read Demotic and he could read ancient Greek. But then he figured out that, wait a minute, the Greek and the Demotic texts were saying the same thing. So the hieroglyphics must also say the same thing. So he basically transcribed the letters of the hieroglyphics to the ancient Greek and the Demotic text. And then he realized, then that caused him to crack the code of the hieroglyphic alphabet. And so as a result, we're able to learn of the teachings of ancient Egypt and of wise people such as Ptah Hotep, we can now know. And so through this, now you're learning about it. And why is this important? Folks, let me be real about something. We are living in times where wisdom is greatly lacking. And that's pretty self-evident. Many people once listened to wise parents or read strong literature or had wise teachers who taught them things. And so there's been a lot of breakdown in family life and a lot of breakdown in community life over since about the 70s or 80s or so, I would say, or more so in recent times. And as a result of this, people are looking for wisdom in many of the wrong places. Instead of going to the library, they go to the internet, and they sometimes, instead of dealing with people who have a legitimate knowledge of these things, they're going to a lot of quack doctors, a lot of false historians, a lot of charlatans in general who appeal to their most negative emotions. And while they play on their emotions, that's not really teaching in many cases. And so since they're not being taught analytical or critical thinking skills in schools in many cases, a lot of them just don't know where to turn right now. There are a lot of people that just don't know what to do. So it's important that whenever one finds wisdom, one should get it and learn from it and share what wisdom they know. Because at a time when wisdom is in short supply, we should do all we can when we find it to share what we know and correct that is what is in error. And with that said, my name is Damon Fordham, telling you about Ptah Hotep.